Satellites can see almost every island, but seeing a place has never meant being able to set foot there. GPS can pinpoint the coordinates, while waves, ice, and cliffs still block the final step. Aircraft shrink continents, yet many journeys still end with one question: how do you actually get ashore? For most people, Google Earth may be the closest they will ever come to reaching these places. This list ranks 9 islands by distance, transport, landing conditions, weather, and access restrictions. At number 8, a community in the Pacific still depends on a small number of ship connections. At number 6, the voyage from Australia to the island takes about 2 weeks aboard a research vessel. At number 3, the greatest barrier is not the sea, but a legal boundary that must be respected. At number 2, residents live without an airport, and every ship journey remains dependent on the sea. At number 1, the nearest coastline is still about 1,700 kilometers away, and it is Antarctica. Distance is only the first layer, because the final approach can be harder than the entire ocean before it. A closer island can still be harder to reach if it lacks a harbor, faces heavy surf, or is surrounded by ice. And sometimes, the most important barrier is not nature, but rules protecting people and ecosystems. These 9 tiny points are scattered from the North Atlantic to waters near the edge of Antarctica. But first, the journey begins at number 9, beyond the western edge of Scotland. From Scotland, the map slides into the Atlantic, leaving the mainland behind and moving toward the Outer Hebrides. Farther west, a small cluster of volcanic rocks stands alone in the waters of the North Atlantic. From the calm satellite view, real cliffs begin to rise behind a veil of sea mist. At number 9, the green cliffs of St Kilda rise like a fortress in the North Atlantic. To reach Hirta, vessels cross open sea, then wait for waves and wind to allow entry into Village Bay. Yet people lived here for millennia. So what finally made them leave? In 1930, the remaining community chose evacuation, ending traditional permanent life across the archipelago. St Kilda belongs to Scotland, lies about 66 kilometers west of Benbecula, and consists of several volcanic islands. From above, Hirta looks green and gentle. Zoom closer, and steep slopes plunge directly into the sea. Beyond Village Bay, much of the coastline is sheer rock and sea stacks exposed to Atlantic waves. But even after reaching Hirta, visitors must follow biosecurity controls designed to protect the ecosystem. In 1930, the last residents faced isolation, difficult supplies, and a community that was steadily shrinking. They packed their belongings, left the stone houses, and boarded boats in the same bay that had sustained the village. As the ship left the bay, a centuries-old island culture became a landscape without a permanent village community. That isolation also created breeding space for nearly 1 million seabirds at the height of the nesting season. Today, no traditional island community lives there permanently, but St Kilda remains studied, managed, and protected. St Kilda allows landings when the sea agrees. The next place makes the ocean journey far longer. At number 8, a small green volcanic island stands alone in the South Pacific. The usual passenger route connects Mangareva to Pitcairn by ship, with each crossing taking about 2 nights. Strangely, this island without an airport still supports a community of only a few dozen residents. The historical reason begins in 1790, when the people aboard the Bounty chose Pitcairn as a refuge. Pitcairn is a British overseas territory and the only inhabited island in its 4-island group. Google Earth makes the island look compact, but Bounty Bay offers only one main gateway below steep terrain. When the sea turns unfavorable, transfers from larger ships to local boats may have to be cancelled. But even after landing, the road called the Hill of Difficulty climbs steeply toward Adamstown. In January 1790, the Bounty reached the island after Fletcher Christian sought a place far from shipping routes. They anchored in Bounty Bay, unloaded supplies, and hauled them up the slope into the island's interior. The Bounty was then burned, cutting off the route back and turning the island into a settlement. Isolation once concealed the new community. Today, that same distance still shapes the rhythm of Pitcairn life. Ships remain the main passenger link, while commercial filming visits require approval from the island government. Pitcairn has a community waiting for ships. The next islands rely almost entirely on dedicated supply voyages. At number 7, Kerguelen spreads like a maze of cold rock across the southern Indian Ocean. These islands are connected only by sea, with 4 annual supply rotations from Reunion. Yet Kerguelen has no permanent population, so who needs a ship to travel thousands of kilometers here? Scientists and technicians rotate through the islands to maintain French research programs and infrastructure. Kerguelen belongs to the French Southern and Antarctic lands, a subantarctic archipelago in the southern Indian Ocean. From orbit, the The coastline resembles branching limbs. Lower down, every bay is divided by mountains and wind. Marion Dufresne cannot berth at a large ship pier, so it remains offshore from Port-au-Français. But even there, people and cargo must continue by helicopter or aboard the barge L'Aventure E. Each supply rotation begins with fuel, food, and equipment being packed before departure from Reunion. The ship then crosses the roaring 40s and furious 50s on a logistics voyage lasting nearly a month. Reaching Kerguelen is not the end. The unloading operation must still adapt to wind and sea. That isolation turns Kerguelen into a natural laboratory for climate, ocean science, and southern ecosystems. With no permanent population, every working season still depends on a logistics chain stretching across the ocean. Kerguelen requires a dedicated supply route. The next island makes even putting people on land difficult. At number 6, Heard Island combines glaciers, rough seas, and an active volcano. From Hobart, RSV Nuyina takes about 2 weeks just to reach the waters around the island. The island is uninhabited, yet Australia still sends an icebreaker, helicopters, and scientists there. They come to monitor an almost pristine ecosystem, along with glaciers and volcanic activity. Heard belongs to Australia but lies about 4,000 kilometers southwest of the continent in the Southern Ocean. On Google Earth, it looks like a white mass at sea. Closer in, glaciers spill toward bare, rocky shores. With no permanent transport network, the 2025 expedition carried 2 helicopters and 3 research boats. But even after the ship arrives, wind can keep the entire team offshore for days. The 2025-2026 Australian expedition had to re-establish Atlas Cove Camp so scientific teams could work ashore. When the weather opened, helicopters moved people in while teams spread out to survey animals and plants. In January 2026, one final short window allowed helicopters to return 20 people to the island. Above them stands Big Ben, the highest active volcano in Australian territory, surrounded by glaciers. Visits are tightly controlled, and all activities must meet Australia's environmental requirements. Heard allows people ashore when weather opens the door. The next island once denied explorers any landing at all. At number 5, Peter E. Island rises from Antarctic waters like a fortress wrapped in ice. Sea ice can block the approach, while steep shores leave only a few possible places for boats. The paradox is that the island was sighted in 1821, yet the discovering expedition could not land. More than a century passed before the Norwegia expedition made the first known landing in 1929. Peter I is an island claimed by Norway, lying off the coast of Antarctica's Ellsworth Land. From above, the island looks like a white shield. Near the coast, that ice ends in steep rock. First comes ice, then waves, then steep slopes that keep the final stage uncertain. But even modern expeditions must be self-sufficient and comply with regulations governing activity in Antarctica. In 1821, Fabian von Bellingshausen saw the island, but weather and sea conditions prevented a landing. The ship had to continue, leaving the newly recorded island without any confirmed footsteps ashore. On February 2, 1929, the Norwegia expedition finally crossed the shore and stepped onto Peter I. Beneath the ice lies a volcanic island, with Lars Christensen Toppen rising to about 1,640 meters. Today, Peter I is still rarely visited, and every trip must be prepared like an expedition. Peter, it could be seen but not touched. The next island carries in its very name the idea of inaccessibility. At number 4, Inaccessible Island raises a ring of cliffs around a green plateau in the South Atlantic. Most of the coast is sheer, and the few rocky landing places are useful only when the sea permits. Strangely, the island called Inaccessible protects a creature that cannot fly. The Inaccessible Island rail lives only here and is considered the world's smallest flightless bird. The island belongs to the Tristan da Cunha group, an extinct volcano with a plateau reaching about 449 meters. From Google Earth, the summit looks fairly flat. Lower the camera, and the green tabletop becomes a wall of rock. Visiting ships cannot anchor overnight, while heavy swell can erase the chance of landing entirely. But even calm seas are not enough, because landings are restricted to protect wildlife. In 2011, oil from the wreck of Milliseconds Oliver near Nightingale reached coastal areas around Inaccessible Island. Conservation teams used small boats to inspect coastal rookeries, but many sites were reachable only in calmer seas. Rough conditions left many breeding sites unchecked at first, while oiled birds needed assistance. The absence of introduced mammals has helped Inaccessible preserve a rare, largely intact temperate island ecosystem. Today, the island forms part of the Gough and Inaccessible World Heritage Site, with landings still tightly controlled. Here, nature builds a wall of stone. The next island adds another boundary that people should not cross. At number 3, a forested island sits behind shallow coastal waters in India's Andaman archipelago. There is no harbor or tourism infrastructure. The shoreline and surrounding reef are not meant for routine access. But here, the question is not how to land, but why outsiders are not allowed to go there. India designates the entire island and the sea within 5 kilometers of its coast as a tribal reserve. North Sentinel belongs to India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands, in waters east of the Bay of Bengal. Google Earth shows dense forest covering almost the entire island, separated from the ocean by a thin coastal strip. Authorities follow an observation without interference policy intended to protect the isolation of the Sentinelese people. So even perfectly calm seas do not turn an illegal landing into a legitimate journey. In 2025, an American citizen entered the restricted area and was later arrested by Indian police. The incident showed that navigation technology can locate the island, but it does not grant permission to cross the protected boundary. Authorities emphasize that unauthorized contact can threaten the safety and health of the Sentinelese community. Current policy recognizes a simple principle. Their isolation is not a challenge for outsiders to conquer. North Sentinel remains protected, while its population and internal way of life cannot be accurately determined from outside. North Sentinel can be seen from orbit, but the most appropriate distance here is the distance that is respected. At number 2, Tristan da Cunha lifts a green volcano from the waters of the South Atlantic. There is no airport. The normal route begins in Cape Town and continues for days entirely by ship. Yet at the end of that voyage is a permanent community, a school, homes, and a very small harbor. In 2026, a medical situation revealed that isolation clearly. Emergency supplies had to be dropped from an aircraft. Tristan is a British overseas territory, about 2,800 kilometers from Cape Town, with only a few hundred residents. Google Earth shows a mountain occupying nearly the whole island, while the settlement clings to a narrow coastal plain. Ocean-going ships are too large for Calshot Harbor, so they anchor offshore and transfer people by smaller craft. But even a ship ticket does not guarantee landing, because both the voyage and shore access depend on weather. In May 2026, Britain needed to deliver urgent medical supplies to a community with no runway. And a 400M departed Ascension, refueled in the air, and flew directly to the airspace above Tristan. The aircraft passed over the settlement and dropped supplies by parachute, but it still could not land on the island. For generations, the Tristan community has adapted to ship schedules, the sea, and the limited resources of a remote island. Visitors today still need advance permission, a place on a ship, and acceptance that schedules may change. Tristan proves a community can live without an airport. The final island does not even have a community waiting for ships. At number 1, Bouvet Island is a mass of ice and rock that seems almost detached from the rest of Earth. It lies about 2,500 kilometers from South Africa, while Dronning Maudland is also roughly 1,700 kilometers away. The paradox is that Bouvet's nearest land still lies on the edge of Antarctica. So why do people go there at all? Norway maintains the seasonal Norwegia station to monitor seals, penguins, and seabirds. Bouvet is a Norwegian volcanic island of about 49 square kilometers, and roughly 89% of it is ice-covered. On Google Earth, the island resembles a white dome. Near the coast, that dome ends in black cliffs. There is no pier or sheltered harbor. Steep cliffs and ocean swell make boat landings extremely dangerous. But even helicopters, the safer, practical option, require special permission before they can land. Norwegian Polar Institute teams therefore bring their own logistics, equipment, and safety systems to the island. When conditions allow, helicopters move people and equipment from the ship to Nyreisa, where the seasonal station stands. Then fog can close the island again, forcing helicopters to wait even when the destination is only minutes away. Isolation has helped Bouvet avoid established introduced species, making biosecurity especially important. Bouvet has been a nature reserve since 1971, with activities on the island subject to strict controls. Bouvet can be located precisely, but sea, cliffs, fog, and distance still decide who actually reaches it. From St Kilda to Bouvet, 9 tiny points form a map of completely different kinds of isolation. Some are blocked by distance, others by waves, ice, cliffs, weather, or necessary legal restrictions. Technology lets us observe, locate, and study them remotely, but it still cannot erase the limits imposed by nature. Of these 9 islands, which would be most worth experiencing, and which is better left to be viewed from afar? If you enjoy geographic journeys like this, Subscribe to the channel and leave your choice in the comments. Bouvet fades into the fog, reminding us that Earth still has places we can see but have not fully conquered.